Give God 90, radio on demand, as I like to call it. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90, and I want to say how much of an honor it is to have you join me for just a little while as we continue to dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator. If you have not done so, please consider downloading the Give God 90 app. It's absolutely free, takes about a minute to download, and you will be happy you did. Trust me. There's going to be some things coming up. You know, we had the interview with Pam, got some other things in the pipeline, and you will be amazed. If you haven't visited GiveGod90.com in a while, please go back and give it another look. We're doing things with it as we speak, and hopefully it will be easier to navigate, and we'll have some other things going on there as well. Something else that I need to mention. If this is the first time you have been listening to Give God 90, you have been. If this is the first time you've listened to Give God 90, that's a better way to say it. You might want to go back and listen to last week's Monday podcast, because that's where I lay out the problems that we face not understanding Genesis properly to the point where we can actually understand Revelation. And I spend some time going through Genesis and establishing the covenant that was made between Adam and God. And Adam and Eve and God, I should say. But there's a covenant there that's established, and we have to understand what that covenant is and what the parameters of that covenant is, so that we can then go into Revelation and say, oh, this is why this happened. Okay? So, you can stick with it, and you may have a little hard time understanding where I'm going with this, but trust me, it'll be easier if you go back and grab that one first, and then come up and catch this one. That's why I like radio on demand, because it just works, okay? It just works. All right. Now, we're going to very quickly get into the Revelation aspect of this, because I got a lot to say, and I've got a lot to go through, a lot of explaining to do, because I am going to challenge some mainstream thoughts on this. Okay. The covenant that was established between God and Adam in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 is more than just caring for the earth. The covenant that was established is a covenant of life. Okay? So when we look at Revelation chapter 5 verse 1, I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book, or a scroll as we know that it is, and it was sealed with these 7 seals. And a lot of people get hung up on, what about these seals? What's so special about these seals? And they look at the seals. They go on. And they assume, because of the verbiage in Genesis chapter 1, that the scroll is the title deed to the earth. Now, what they're talking about there is where God makes the statement to everyone on earth, and which would have been Adam at the time, and all of the divine beings in heaven. And he said, we're going to make God in our image, and we're going to let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, and all that good stuff, right? That's not a gift. That is an exchange. And the exchange is, I'm going to let you live in here, but there's certain things you have to do. The be fruitful and multiply was specific to Adam and Eve. He told the other animals to do that too. Remember that, okay? But the thing is, he establishes this covenant of life. To the animals, he spoke them into creation. Man is the only one where he actually takes his time, and Moses explains that he formed us out of the mud, right? And then he knelt down and breathed into us that breath of life. The covenant of life that is established in Genesis is an amazing thing. For him to have given us the earth as a gift is really, I think, oversimplifying things. And I don't think it stands scripturally. Sorry to challenge all of the established people, even back as far as the first century, okay? And probably before that, because David writes in Psalm 24, verse 1, "The earth and everything in it belong to the Almighty." They belong to Yehovah. They belong to God. The world and all its people, everything belong to Him. So knowing that, does it fit the narration that this scroll is the title deed to the land? I don't really think it does. I don't think it fits. But let's look at something. If we go to Isaiah chapter 49, verse 2, it says, "He has made my mouth like a sharp sword while hiding me in the shadow of His hand. He has made me like a sharpened arrow while concealing me in His quiver." All right. The word here for shadow, I'll get to in a second, because that's important. He continues, and in verse 16 of chapter 49 of Isaiah, it says, "I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are continually before me." So this scroll must be so important. He not only holds it in his hand, but he looks at it all the time. I'm going to lay something out here that I hope you find fascinating, because I find it fascinating. If we look back to the Hebrew words, and as you well know, there are certain Hebrew words that look the same, that have different meaning. English does this all the time. Now, if we look at, for instance, in English, the word cat, it is very dissimilar to the thing called cot, right? One is a furry little animal that you pet and it purrs, and then scratches you and goes on its way. And then the other thing, a cot, you lay down on and take a nap. Well, in Hebrew, if words come out of the same root, or if they're spelled similarly, they give us the same concept of ideas. Now, the word chatam in Hebrew means to seal. You're going to seal something up, okay? And it is spelled very, very similar, letter-wise, to the word choma. We look at that, and it gives us this same thing. Now, the word choma means wall. If you're going to seal something up, or you're going to have a wall, there's going to be a separation of space, okay? There's going to be a separate thing on one side of a wall than there is on the other. There's going to be a separate thing on one side of a seal than there is on the other. So you grab that concept, I hope. It gives us the idea that there is something separating us. So when we look at verse 16, "I've engraved you on the palm of my hand. Your walls are continually before me." The separation is, I'm looking at it all the time. The word zel, sometimes we see it translated as shadow. Sometimes we see it translated as shelter. The first time we see it used is in Genesis, and it talks about bringing someone under the shadow of their tent. They're bringing them under the shelter of their tent. Okay? Psalm 63, verse 8. "My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me." Now, a few weeks ago, I asked a group of people that I studied with, what does that word uphold mean? Okay? Their answer might not be surprising because they read it and they looked at it and said, oh, well, it means to hold you up. Almost like support, right? And that's it's used like that sometimes. But think about this. It can also mean to hold on to hold fast, to grab onto, not to let go. Not to let go. Psalm 18:35. You protect me with your saving shield. You support me with your right hand. You have stooped to make me great. Oh my. Oh my. Support here. Support here. Sa'ad. Sa'ad. Now, the way this Hebrew word is spelled gives us a tremendous amount of information because it's actually spelled with a samech. Now, that is the only closed Hebrew letter. If you go back in time to the Paleo-Hebrew, this letter was formed differently. It looked like a fence post with cross pieces on it. Usually 3, sometimes 4 cross pieces on it. And it would give you the impression, of a fence. Something enclosed. Now, you can enclose things sometimes to keep things in, right? Or you can enclose them to keep other things out. Sometimes what you're sealing you want to keep safe. Sometimes you just want to put it away like you're putting it in prison. Now, that is an important concept because this word here, you support me with your right hand. All of these things together gives us this idea that our Creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, holds us in His right hand. What is so important that He would hold us in His right hand? What about humanity is so important? Is it the title deed to the earth when the earth is going to be destroyed? It says in Revelation, the end of Revelation, that I, John, saw the new city coming down from heaven like a bride adorned, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there were no more sea. Right? That's what it says. That was my paraphrase, but that's the short part of what it says. We look at that, we know that earth and heaven are going to be destroyed. Why would God worry so much about having the title deed to the earth in His hand if He was going to burn it down, so to speak? If I build a house, now think about this, if I build a house and it's supposed to be for the people that I want to live there, but somebody else moves in and changes the locks, one of the options I have is burning the house down around the squatters, right? That's what we call people who live in a house without justification for being there. If I burn the house down around them, I can start all over again, or, I could find a way to kick them out. But that's not what is being described through the rest of Revelation. What's actually being described through the rest of Revelation is we're going to burn the house down around you. You don't belong there. Why worry about stripping the seals off of the title deed to a piece of property when you're going to destroy it anyway? That just doesn't make any sense. But let's go back for a moment to this concept of a covenant between God and Adam and Eve that is a covenant of life. Adam and his descendants, of which we are one, we get to live in God's home and care for it. Okay? The home that he built for us, we get to live here, we get to care for it. In return, he gives us life. Very shortly after that covenant was established, the enemy came and tricked Eve out of life. He tricked Eve out of life by beginning to give her the process of death after she ate from the fruit that she should not have eaten from. They realized, now there was 2 trees in the garden, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. They ate from the tree of knowledge. Because the thing is, do you want to be like God? Right? Did God really say? Well, the serpent tricked Eve, who knew what the penalties were. It begins the process of death. Adam eats the fruit. Now, all of a sudden, this covenant of life, and with covenant, there's penalties. What is the penalty? The penalty is exactly what we're living under today. What we live under today, God came down and He directs punishment to the serpent, to Adam, and to Eve. We still live under the punishment of those penalties today. That covenant of life that the enemy was able to seal, the Almighty holds in His hand. The scroll in Revelation chapter 1, Revelation chapter 5, verse 1, I saw in the right hand of the one seated on the throne a scroll. And it was written on the inside and on the outside. That scroll that has been called the title deed to the earth, I'm going to challenge that assumption. I think it's more important than the deed to something that the Almighty is going to destroy anyway. I believe that scroll is the book of life that will be opened and read later in the book of Revelation. I have just shown you how many verses, how many witnesses, beginning in Isaiah. If we begin in Isaiah 49, and I go back to Psalm 63, Psalm 18, we can look at Proverbs, we can look at many, many other places, and we can see where the Almighty holds us in His hand. There's something separating us from the Almighty. The walls are up. No one was worthy to open that scroll. No one was worthy to strip those seals except one person. And that person happened to be the prophet that we have to listen to. The one that was prophesied about in Deuteronomy. The one that would do greater things than Moses ever thought about doing. That prophet was the one that was able to strip the seals. And we see that the seals, when they are stripped, really don't affect the earth that much. The first horse that goes out is the white horse. He goes out to conquer. Now, the first white horse that goes out is deception. It's the enemy. The first thing he conquers is Adam and Eve. And he begins the process of death for them and for us. After that, everything, whether it is, why in the world, if it's the title deed to the earth, does the earth care about finances? The black horse that goes out, It deals with financial things. Deer, rabbits, foxes, buffalo, antelope, cattle, fish, birds, they don't care about finances. The Almighty takes care of everything they need. The only ones who care about finances are humans. When the Almighty formed us and breathed that breath of life into Adam, He establishes something with Adam more important than dirt. So important that He builds into us this desire for a covenant relationship with our Creator. In that, we see so much. We can look at the way we have, and today we call it this personal relationship, right? But it's more than that. It's more than that. It is a relationship that is based on, I'm going to completely, fully rely on my Creator, and He's going to take care of me. That's the covenant relationship. It's the covenant of life. He establishes this covenant of life. He writes our names in the book. There is a tradition among the Hebrew, ancient Hebrew people and the modern Jewish people as well, that when God spoke creation into existence, He spoke the name of everyone who would ever be born. And He put it in His book. And the only one who can blot their name out of that book is you. You are the only one who has the authority to remove your name from that book. You're the only one who has the authority to remove your name from that book. No one else can remove your name. You can't remove anyone else's name. You have the authority over yourself to remove your name from the book of life that the Almighty holds in His hand. That's how important it is. He holds that book in His hand. He doesn't turn it loose. Even though it's sealed, He's the only one. He's not given it up. He hasn't given up on us, and we shouldn't give up on Him. Our Creator, He kind of is amazing the way He does things. Because He lets us think of things for a while, and then all of a sudden He turns it upside down. He says, no, I want you to think about it my way. Look at it the way I see it. The earth, not a big deal. I can do that over again. It's okay. It's not a problem. I'll just burn it down and start over. I can do that. But you're important. I don't want to burn my house down around you. I've got your name written in my book. Don't blot it out. Don't erase it. I want you to keep it there. You're the one who has put the wall up. It may have been the enemy that sealed that scroll, but in reality, I think if we really, really thought about it for a second, we're the ones who keep the seals on. And the only one that has the authority to strip those seals is the only one who came and did everything exactly the way the Almighty said, this is what I need you to do. And He said, okay. Might not be what I want to do, but I'll do it. Not because I'm okay with going through all the pain, suffering, and torture, but because you're telling me I'm okay with going through the pain, the suffering, and the torture. Not because I really want to go down to the place of the dead, but because you tell me it's okay for me to go to the place of the dead. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for humanity. I don't do this because I want to. I do this because I trust you, Father, enough to do it for you. When we think about how important this book of life is, it changes Revelation. When we look at Revelation as a book of repentance and restoration, what we see is this image of our Creator holding on to a scroll, a list of names. A list of names so important that he holds it in his hand all the time. He can't open the scroll yet. Well, I shouldn't say he won't open the scroll yet. Not until the time is right. And everything that he has said is ready. He's not willing to turn it over to just anybody. He's got his hands on it. He's got his hands on it, and he's holding on to it. And he's not willing to let just anybody hold on to it. It's got to be the one that can take it and pull those seals off. We get hung up a lot of times on the seals. We get hung up a lot of times on what most people would call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And you know what? There's really 5. There are the 5 horsemen of the apocalypse. I'll go into that just a little bit more next time because I am running out of time here. But I really, really, really hope you can see where I am coming from with this. You can see why I need to challenge the establishment on this. And quite honestly, it needs to be challenged. Because to think that that scroll would be the title deed when David writes that the earth and all that is in it belong to Yehovah, to our Creator. He doesn't need the title deed. He doesn't need it. It's unnecessary. He already owns it. He doesn't need the deed to heaven. He already owns that. But what he really, really wants, what his desire is to be able to have that covenant with us that he enjoyed before Adam and Eve ate the fruit that they weren't supposed to eat. That's what he wants. For a very long time now, he has been separated. He's had that wall, that seal of separation between us. I think he's ready to tear it down. I think he's ready to hand that scroll into the hands of the one who can strip the seals and turn the horsemen loose and let them have their way. I think the Almighty is ready to be able to have that closeness with us once again that we get in a covenant relationship. I think the Almighty is ready to reestablish what he believes is his perfection. And I really, really hope that you're ready to have your name read from that scroll. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been a blessing to you. Until next time, I wish you many, many blessings.